Welcome to your deep dive on leadership and power. We're going to cover everything you absolutely need to know to nail this section on your exam.
All right, let's start with a classic exam topic, the difference between a leader and a manager. Because you got to know, they're definitely not the same thing. Think of it like this. A leader influences people through their personal qualities, making them want to follow. A manager, on the other hand, uses their formal job title, their authority, to make sure people comply. Getting this difference is absolutely crucial. Okay, so now let's kind of trace the history of how we think about leadership. You'll see how the ideas evolved, and that progression is really key to understanding the whole picture. You know, the earliest theories were super simple. They basically just assumed that great leaders were born, not made, that they came pre-packaged with a special set of traits that just set them apart from everyone else. And yeah, research did find some connections. Things like being extroverted or conscientious, those can predict who might step up as a leader. But here's the fatal flaw. This theory completely ignores the situation. And it turns out, just having the right traits doesn't mean you'll succeed. So, if traits weren't the whole story, researchers started asking a much better question. What do effective leaders actually do? And this was a game changer because it shifted the focus to behavior, suggesting for the very first time that, hey, maybe leadership is a skill you can learn. These huge studies came up with two core behaviors. One is consideration, being focused on your people. The other is initiating structure, being focused on getting the task done. The idea was the best leaders do both. But you guessed it, just like trait theory, this view still didn't really factor in the context. And that failure led to this absolutely crucial insight, which is the heart of contingency theories. There is no one-size-fits-all way to lead. The best leadership style is contingent on, it depends on, the situation. Fiedler's model is a perfect example. It says your style is pretty much fixed. You're either task-oriented or relationship-oriented. Success comes from matching your style to the right situation. So imagine a total crisis, low trust, unclear tasks. A task-oriented leader who just gives clear, direct orders is probably going to be the most effective one there. It's all about the match. Vroom's model does something similar, but from making decisions. The right way to decide depends on the problem. Look, if you have all the info and your team is on board, making a quick autocratic choice works. But if you really need your team's buy-in, a more delegative style is going to be way more effective. So this whole focus on it depends really paved the way for modern theories. And these theories shift the focus even more, away from command and control and way more towards inspiration and empowerment. Okay, here's a distinction you absolutely have to know. Transactional versus transformational leadership. Transactional leaders are about exchanges. You do this, I'll give you that. But transformational leaders, they inspire their followers to look beyond their own self-interest and work for the good of the whole team. And today's post-heroic views go even further. The big idea is that leadership is a relationship, a two-way street. You see this in servant leadership, which is all about putting your followers first, or in followership theory, which recognizes that followers play an active role, and in leader-member exchange, or LMX, which looks at the unique relationship a leader builds with every single person on their team. So how do leaders actually get people to do things? Well, the answer is in the engine that drives leadership, understanding and using power. At its core, power is just the ability to influence someone else because you control something they value. That creates dependence, and dependence is really the foundation of all power. Now, power comes from two main sources. First, there's formal power. This comes from your job title, your ability to punish, to reward, or just your official authority. Then you have personal power. This comes from you, from your expertise, or from the simple fact that people respect and admire you. That's referent power.
And these different types of power are like fuel for different influence tactics. You can use soft tactics, like using logic or inspiring people. Those pull from your personal power. Or you can use hard tactics, like pressure or building coalitions, which lean much more heavily on your formal power. And here's the bottom line. The tactic you choose determines the reaction you get. The goal is always that big slice of the pie, commitment, and you get that by using your personal power and soft tactics. Hard tactics, they're way more likely to just get you compliance, or even worse, outright resistance. Okay, let's wrap this up and lock in the most important points from everything we've just covered.
First, and if you remember one thing, make it this. Effective leadership is situational. The answer is always, it depends. The best style has to match the specific situation you're in.
Second, modern leadership is all about relationships, not just a title. The focus has totally shifted to inspiring a vision, serving your team, and empowering other people to do their best work.
And third, the most effective, most sustainable influence comes from personal power. What you know and who you are will build real, long-term commitment way better than any job title ever will.
To make sure you're totally prepared, you can find the complete summary of this and a bunch of practice tests to really nail these concepts over on gradeguru.nl.
So the crucial point is that leadership behaviors can be learned. The key takeaways from this lesson are that leadership style must adapt to the situation, that modern leadership focuses on relationships and empowerment, and that the most sustainable influence comes from personal power, not just formal authority.